Okay, here we go. So, hey everybody, it's Marie with Data 360 and Data 360 Labs. We're here with Barbara Bickham of the Blockchain Accelerator from USC, and she's going to talk a little bit about her accelerator, accelerators in general, why they matter, and a little bit about how she arrived at the Blockchain Accelerator. It's probably going to go in reverse, right, Barbara? So, how did you arrive there, and then the
Yeah,
accelerators?
yeah,
Uh,
we'll go in reverse
We'll
on
get
that
there.
thing.
Yeah. And any questions or things we can answer? As you guys know, Data 360 Labs, we feature various mentors, speakers in our ecosystem for our online incubator where you can work out your ideas, models, and business and have it validated and either work towards getting customers or work towards getting funding and investment. We now officially have 10 investor groups in our online incubator as of this month. We're adding several more. We're also adding various corporate groups. So if you have any questions or you want to learn more about joining the Data 360 Labs, please email us at support at data360.solutions. And with that, I'll hand it over to Barbara.
All right, well, thank you, Marie. So I will, hold on, I will start my presentation here in a minute. I'll just do my whole screen. And then we'll go into why do accelerators matter? Let's see, window. All right, awesome. All right, so I am Barbara Bickham. I'm the CTO at Trailyn Ventures. And what Trailyn Ventures does is we do blockchain advisory on the technical side. So anything you want to know as far as how do you architect and design and innovate on the blockchain, technically, we do that. And I'm also the chief of the block at the Blockchain Accelerator for Global Growth. And so Marie asked me to talk a little bit about blockchain and then a little bit about how the Blockchain Accelerator for Global Growth came about. So blockchain is a technology that enables you to do four things. It's a permanent record of something, so it's immutable. It's a ledger, so it does debit and credit. It only has two parts to it. It's encrypted, which means it's secure and private. And then it's also distributed, which means it's not all in one place. So that's the essence of what a blockchain is. And I get this asked often, how did I get into the blockchain space? So I'll talk a little bit about that. In 2012, I know a lot of the people that got in very, very early that are now Bitcoin and billionaires. And a few of my friends asked me to come in there in 2012, and I was like, this can't be real. It's just kind of fake money, right? Well, come to find out, not so fake. So then in 2015, I was approached again, and I got interested because somebody gave me a really good talk on how does money work and the kind of the history of money. And I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And so I tried to get into the blockchain space again. And I did get one project in there, and we tried to do this fantasy coin actually. And that didn't quite work because the way that you configured a company back then was very, very difficult. And then 2017, I got one client in the blockchain space. And then this is kind of when the accelerator idea came about also. But since kind of 2017, August 2017 until now, I've been in the blockchain space. So how did the Blockchain Accelerator for Global Growth come about? In 2017, after we got that first blockchain client, which is called, their name is To Transfer, I started evaluating kind of how do we go about accelerating blockchain companies, because I was kind of associated with somebody that could help accelerate companies in a very fast way. And so we were looking at models as to how to take in multiple companies, almost like a cohort, and advance them very quickly. And so I went all over the world. I did a huge competitive analysis, a mission statement, a vision statement, and a competitive analysis, and said, who else is doing this here anywhere? Like, does this even exist anywhere? And the answer was yes. There were about 20 accelerators blockchain related in the world in 2017. Now there are a few more. There might be 30, 10 more. But there are still very, very few here in the United States. As a matter of fact, there were 0 in the United States when I first did the initial analysis, and now there's about 5. So, you know, that's not too much competition. But I went and did that, and it took a while because there was just no vehicle to create that acceleration point. Like, we needed some education, we needed some powder, we needed some other things that you're going to learn about here in a few minutes. But so it was kind of laying dormant, and I got connected with the International Business Accelerator, and USC was looking for a blockchain something, acceleration, incubation. They were looking to get into the blockchain space. And so that's how the 3 of us came together, and we started moving this forward. So we just had our first cohort, and they're just now done, and we're having our second one. So if you guys want to apply for that, please do. And I kind of picked the blockchain because A, that's in my expertise. B, I have a lot of connections there, although I have a lot of connections in all the advanced tech areas. And C, I thought it was a good way to serve the blockchain community and help companies in a way that, in kind of a broader way than just doing it individually, like through Trailyn or how I advise companies now anyway. So are there any questions on that? I'm kind of interactive, so if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Just yell out. All right, so, you know, why do people even apply to accelerators? I mean, why do they exist, and why do people apply to them? Well, most people apply to accelerators because they want money, you know, clearly. They might want some education, and they also apply because some of these accelerators have huge, huge networks of people, companies, mentors, perks, connections into other things. So that's why people apply to accelerators. And accelerators do have criterion. So most accelerators have some type of basic level of something they're looking for. So in our case, we're kind of agnostic to the blockchain, but we do have some criteria. So for example, if you're a cannabis company, we probably won't look at you too much because we're already in the blockchain space, and then you're kind of adding in cannabis, so we might not look at you. But if you're doing any other kind of agricultural items, you know, that would be great. And since we're blockchain agnostic, we don't really care which one you're using. We'll like you whether you're using EOS or any of these other Ethereum, Hyperledger. We don't really care. So that's why people apply. And then why do investors like accelerators? I mean, there's a lot of accelerators that are associated with funds like 500 Startups or Y Combinator, or you know, Quake Capital has one. You know, why do these funds have accelerators? Well, they do it for deal flow. They do it for due diligence to make sure you're fundable. And they also do it to help you scale. So when you get powder from accelerators, sometimes they do that for scaling. Okay, so do accelerators have to even have an investment thesis? Well, if an accelerator is attached to a fund, then they do have some investment thesis. And what does that mean? That's the criteria in which you are accepted into their accelerator. So when you apply to like Y Combinator or 500 Startups, or soon the Blockchain Accelerator, you need to understand that that money is coming from a fund. And when the money comes from a fund, their partners, which put the investment in, have invested into the fund based upon the thesis that they're giving. So an example of a thesis would be, okay, we're going to invest in diverse founders. So that's a thesis. And we're going to invest X types of dollars into diverse founders, and we're going to try and get so many of these types of diverse founders and return so much. So that's an investment thesis. And that's what the investors of the fund then invest in the fund for. So you have, when you're looking at these accelerators, you also have to see, do I fit into the investment thesis? Because sometimes when you're applying to accelerators, you'll apply to maybe 10 or 15 accelerators. But if you're not within what they're investing in, then you're just kind of wasting your time from an application perspective. Now, some accelerators aren't attached to a fund. So they don't have those restrictions as far as an investment thesis. They still might have some criteria, and they usually have access to investors, but they don't have the actual physical powder. So they have education and networks, which you could take advantage of. So in our first cohort, like we don't have a fund yet. So we funneled our people out, which is actually better for funds, because if they're looking for other companies and they know you've been accelerated, then that's a competitive advantage for you from a company side.
Yeah, and I also want to add, Barbara, with Google and Amazon, because a lot of people ask us about corporate funds,
Yes,
and other kinds of funds. So we're attached. Our Data 360 Labs is attached to many different programs and programmers that have certain criteria to invest in your business. So sometimes they'll put in development resources or marketing or resources because you fit their strategy, which is almost the same as an investment thesis. So essentially you match what they're up to, what their goals are, what they want to accomplish, and what they want to prove to the world.
Well, and that's a good point also, Marie, thanks for bringing that up, in that the investment may not always be cash. It could be resources, which could be huge. So I know Microsoft does this. If they have an AI section, and instead of them giving you, $100,000 for AI, they might give you $100,000 of development services, marketing services. So for a company, that could be equally as valuable as the money, because companies always think they need money, but they usually need some type of resource. And resource could be money, it could be people, it could be thought, you need other mentors, it could be education, it could be many things.
Yeah, and a lot of times, I mean, we even take advantage of this at Data 360. We get R&D funds, we get conference credits, we get incentive programs to do good in the world. Like sometimes Google is a very big fan of this. They have a bunch of education and do-gooder projects that are related to their products and services, a huge education initiative. So they do a lot of funding related to that piece, not so much about just handing out cash for cash sake. They're really doing it because they have some type of particular incentive. And you always should do your homework and look up what the program is about, what kind of businesses they fund, and what their thesis is. And if you can't find it, ask the contact you have when you're applying.
Yes, it's very important from the accelerator side and from the fund side, because like I go through a lot of applications, so I'm there screening all the applicants. And if it doesn't, if you're just like not matching, it's kind of like, why did you even bother to fill it out? But a lot of people will just go and fill out application after application because it says accelerator, or it says accelerator and it has funds attached, and they're looking for money. But the reality is, if you're not fitting into their thesis, first of all, you're wasting your time by filling out, these applications are not like 5 minutes, like you're filling out a lot of information about your company repeatedly. And then number two, you might be wasting the screener's time in that like you don't really match what they're doing. And so that doesn't serve you well from a company side. So you gotta do a lot of homework. Okay, so why do accelerators matter? I mean, what do good ones provide versus other ones? So the real good ones do two things. They create a due diligence, which I'll go into what that is a little bit, which is helping you prepare for funding. And then they help your company grow and scale. And that could be from a partnership level, like what Google would do, or from a customer level, which, Google could do that also if they had some customers to connect you with customers. But accelerators, the good ones, the 500 startups, the Blockchain Accelerator does this, Y Combinator, they all have a process called due diligence. And so what is that? That is the process that prepares your company to be fundable. Now, what does that mean? You create a data room that has every corporate document related to funding. It could be your business plan. It could be your legal formation documentation. If you have a PPM, that could go in there. Your IP should go in there. Your financials should go in there. Your contracts should go in there. Your NDA should go in there. There's customer contracts. There's several things that go into a due diligence room for a traditional company. And then on a blockchain side, there's another additional thing. So in the Blockchain Accelerator, we have 31 pages of due diligence that we run through to prepare these companies for their funding, because blockchain investors look at things a few more elements than traditional investors. And then the other thing an accelerator should be doing for you is helping you to grow and scale your company from a customer side. Now, why is that important? So when you do your programming, whether it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, at the end, you should be ready to talk to investors, and you should have acquired a customer, a partner, some type of game-changing milestone event from that side as well. And why is that important? Because investors like revenues. And so if you're just coming into the accelerator for money, and you're not going to turn that into a customer, a paying customer, and be ready for the process of getting your next round of funding, which could be seed, it could be Series A, it could be Series B. Series B, they're going to do serious due diligence. Then you haven't taken advantage of what the accelerator can provide for you, because these partnerships and customers are the things that are going to make and break your company. So accelerators are usually a little bit beyond product market fit. Like, we kind of see like you've figured out what market you're in, where you're going, what your product is doing. That's why a lot of accelerators look for companies kind of with a little bit of revenue, some revenues. So you don't have to completely get them a whole, like, I'm getting you your first customer. That's tough. But that means that hopefully we're not getting you your first customer. That means if we took someone like that, we didn't serve you well. We should be giving you over to the Data 360 labs, where you can go through some other parts and then come into an accelerator. The other reason why accelerators matter is because of this. The due diligence is so important to be provided to an investor, because all these investors are going to ask you for all this paperwork and all this documentation in order to verify that your company is structured properly, like your company is a real company that has veracity and you're serious. And so this part is where most deals fall out. So if you were trying to raise $1 million for someone, I'll just use that as an example, and most people say, oh, well, this due diligence takes 3 to 6 months. Well, why is that? It does because you were not prepared when the investor asked you a question about where is your XYZ documentation, and it could be like, where's your contract, your key people's contracts at the C level, like your CTO's contract for the last 12 months, or have you had any key hires leave in the last 12 months? Or like, where's your cap table?
Yeah. And also I'll add,
Go ahead.
the thing I lecture all the labs participants or the people who are applying the labs is deal mechanics. Like,
yes,
there's a lot of things like how you sell things and how you compete in the marketplace needs to be defined well. It can't just be like, well, I want to sell, like I met this lady, I want to sell these fancy cookies. Well, who are your competitors? What's your customer acquisition strategy? And not only that, do you even have the legal deal in terms so that you don't get into hot water with your customers when they decide not to follow instructions, or when they decide not to act the way you want them to act, or when they're disruptive? Do you have positive customer nurturing that makes sure the deal falls along well so that you can upsell and cross-sell them to other things? Do you have a way to grow that revenue? Do you have a way to do lifetime value? And I know that all sounds like Greek, because it all sounds like Greek when we all start.
Yeah.
It's not natural behavior. But what you have to do is get insatiably curious about the mechanics of how your organization runs. And I
Yeah.
don't care whether it's a nonprofit, a social enterprise, an academic endeavor, a for profit, a tech company, a restaurant. I mean, we talk to all different kinds of companies that do all different kinds of things. The main thing is you have to make sure that those mechanics make sense. And like, for example, with Data 360 Labs, we're enforcing a certain kind of back office because we're very concerned with people's lack of awareness about how back office works.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
gosh. Yeah, you
and
could
so
have several different ones of those.
yeah, so we're enforcing, a Google-based back office with all of our labs participants and all of our partners because we want to make sure that we don't go into this hodgepodge of, oh, I have GoDaddy and I don't know where my data is and I don't know whether my data is secure and I don't know where my customer records are and like all the stuff that
Right.
people do when they start businesses and they just kind of wing it. So you have to be very, very careful. You're not fundable until you have all your systems in place, or
Right.
you have the potential to have them in place very quickly. You cannot just get it based on a product idea alone
No.
unless your investor decides that you have to become compliant on their back office and their systems, which
Right.
happens sometimes. But a lot of times people get funded because they already have that stuff in place. It is very rare to get funded without having infrastructure in place. Just having an idea and hope that somebody helps you with it. That would not
Yeah,
be a great
I
plan.
mean, yeah. So one of the things that accelerators do too is this is a part of the due diligence on the accelerators part, but going back to, kind of what do we look at from a criterion perspective. So I've gotten calls for the accelerator. Hey, Barb, I have an idea to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C. And I said, okay, that's nice. I said, but you're a little bit too early for this accelerator because you only have an idea. So you need to go, and I ask them like 3 or 4 questions, and I go, well, you're a little too early. You need to go and do these 4 things, form your company, get, clearly kind of do your business model canvas. You can do that and kind of get your ideation together. I said, do a couple other things and then come back, or I can send you over to this other place and then come back and talk to me later because they're not ready then to be accelerated. Because in 12 weeks, so just to let you guys know, we had our first cohort, and it's our demo day was last Friday, and we had 7 start and 4 finished. So why is that? Because 12 weeks is long, but it's also intensive. And because the blockchain is incorporated in it, it's extra intensive because we have to be, we as the blockchain accelerator has to deal with international issues. So what happens if a company here in the US wants to set up something in Malta, wants to set up something in the Bahamas, wants to set up something in Singapore, wants to set up something in Korea, wants to set, I mean, we're literally talking to all these types of people. So how do you deal with that from a global scale? So there's a lot of education and understanding that has to go on when setting up your blockchain company. There's issues of banking, there's issues of taxes, there's issues of resourcing. Where do I get the blockchain developers? Well, Facebook had to go buy a company to get a bunch. So like, where are they all? Where do I get them? What other types of people do I need? There's all these different issues. And so it's very important going into it, trying to understand kind of what your company is and where you are on the trajectory. So most of the companies that we had products, and they were integrating in the blockchain pieces of the product. So that's kind of our sweet spot at the accelerator. I think that was it. So that was it. That's kind of my contact information. Were there any questions? What kind of?
Does anyone have any questions? I can start off a few of
You
those. You're gonna take down your lovely face. Oh, okay.
want me to put it
Well,
back up?
there's your face. Put your live face. No, wait, your
This is my
live face.
live face. I decided to put the live face on.
Okay. So, one is in terms of blockchain based businesses.
Yes.
What do you see is like kind of the hot stuff that's happening in blockchain that's like really getting funded and really viable in your not just from your accelerator but just in general, like what's happening in the blockchain business?
Okay, so from a funding perspective, you know, everyone is kind of familiar with what has happened as far as the kind of the crypto winter. That's what they're calling it, crypto winter.
Yes.
So this actually started in August of 2018, last year. So the thing that happened that I noticed from Trailyn's perspective, this has nothing to do with the accelerator, but from my advisory perspective, was that there were projects that were going to start putting things onto a blockchain that decided they're not going to do it. So I'm like, well, that was kind of dumb, because if you're going to do it, you should be committed to doing it, right? I mean, it shouldn't matter what's going on in the marketplace.
They're probably risk averse. It was
people,
probably
People got nervous. So then again, this again happened. I had a few other projects in kind of at the end of the year that were supposed to close that decided not to do it because it, you know, it went down even further from August to December. And so things are getting funded. So what is considered fundable in the blockchain space? Well, investors are getting smarter. So what are they funding? They're funding things that have products already. They're funding things that have well-defined teams. They're funding things that have kind of some level of product market fit. So that means they have a few customers. They don't have to be paying revenue generating yet. If you have revenues, that's great. If you have a currently existing community and you want to put a blockchain into a currently existing community, they're funding that kind of thing. As far as the markets being funded, you know, games are big. AR/VR is big. What else is big? Logistics is big. Supply chain is big. Medical is big. Healthcare is big. I don't know. I think the fintech area is going to morph a little bit because I don't know if everyone saw this, but this morning JP Morgan Chase decided to have their own coin. And so we'll see kind of how that evolves into something, you know, like the banking area is going to start getting very interesting. So that's something to watch as far as like not funding, because no one's like, I'm not going to be a bank. The other thing to be watching is kind of how are the regulations here in the United States going to come out? Because I think this year they're going to have to figure that out. Because if they don't, we'll just be so far behind in the rest of the world. I mean, it's funny because the rest of the world is very more advanced as far as their blockchain adoption, their regulation, you know, who's passing what laws. And the SEC here has been kind of slow on that, as far as at least giving some kind of recommendations as to what to be doing or not doing. So.
Yeah. So what countries are doing the best right now in the blockchain space that are just on it?
Malta's pretty on it, but they're a small country. I saw Russia is starting to pass some things. Singapore is very advanced. Hong Kong's very advanced. China not so advanced. Not really the Cayman Islands. They're not too advanced. What about here are medical training games? Yeah, that could be cool. As long as it's on a blockchain, that could work.
That's interesting.
That could work. We could talk about that.
I used to, the weird thing is I used to do medical video games.
Interesting.
Weird part of my history, but yeah, there is
there could actually be a that. So in our accelerator, I'll just say like we had 7 and 4 survived. So of the 4, we had 2 medicals. So one was health records on the blockchain. One was opioid prevention on the blockchain. So how does that even relate? Well, you know, if you can go to a doctor and get 15 scripts written and you don't know, and then you got 15 things of Oxycontin, you can become either a really great drug dealer or you're going to take all that. So, you know, it's a way to kind of help. The blockchain is a way to prevent like having all those multiple scripts written. The other one's True Diary. And what they do is they kind of, if you have records here in LA and then you move to like Atlanta or Texas or somewhere else, how do you go about getting the health records? Well, you can't. Like it's very difficult to get all my records from California, which I've been here my whole life. So all my records are here. And then to Georgia, because they're not just going to give me all my records. So how do I do that? And how do I give that to the doctor and make sure that whatever is going on with me, that they don't have to rerun like my whole life of tests from the beginning of time. The other one's called the labs, and what they do is they do music workflow. And so there's like $2.5 billion of money that's not paid to musicians because they didn't fill out their paperwork properly. You don't know if their music got sampled correctly. You don't know who put what music in where, so what rights that they have. It could be international rights. So international rights work a little bit differently than local rights in the music area. When you do sample music, it's kind of like the IP there lasts your lifetime plus 70 years or plus 35 years. So if you died, how long do you get those royalties? I mean, yeah, it's kind of complicated. So then how do you go about empowering that ecosystem? And then the last one is actually an interesting one. It's a POS for crypto. And so what it does is it's just a normal POS system. It's a box just like you see on any other POS box. And oh, cool. Well, that's cool. I should have my girl talk to your sister. But the POS box prints out a crypto receipt and you scan it, and then you can pay with your crypto that way, and then it'll go right into the person's account. So that's what that one is. So those were the 4 that graduated. So we had 3 that didn't graduate. So one was a dating app. You never say you'll never do anything, because I ended up with 2 dating apps after I said I'd never do one.
Oh, wow.
The second one was that one. They did have cannabis supply chain. That was one. And then another one, this was actually interesting, and this guy could have done it had he done the work. He wanted to tokenize himself. So he wanted to create an asset-backed token that was backed by his revenues. Now, why do we care about that? Because this was going to be used for like college athletes and pros. And we were going to look at celebrities and how we could like tokenize and back them. So like if we wanted to have LeBron coin, how do we go about backing like LeBron's coin? Well, it would be backed by his income. And then investors could invest in that and see if it went up and down. So it was kind of an interesting thing to do.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was very, very interesting. It was very, very interesting. And that was going to be super, super interesting as far as like one of the kind of unique ways to do an asset-backed coin. There aren't too many like that.
Yeah. I would say for the record, we have a dating coach in our cohort.
All right, great. Well, you can't,
So there you go.
Be careful when you say don't do it, because then, I actually did 2 dating apps. So
yeah, dating's a big business, actually.
But you know what? It's very crowded. It's a very crowded space. I learned. I mean, there's a lot. You're competing against eHarmony, Match.com. Tinder. It's a big space. It's very, very, very crowded.
Yeah. Any other questions? I don't want to hog up all the question time.
Well, Eric asked a question. He said, how about VR medical training games? Who is this? Who's 626? I got the chat, but I hear you, 626. Ask a question.
Did you have a question? Who's on the 626 phone number?
Who's on the number? Couldn't hear him. All right.
I don't know. We couldn't hear you.
On. So Eric asked about how about VR medical training games? Oh, 626. Yes. Please ask a question.
We hear you a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry. I'm going back on mute. I apologize.
No, go for it.
Did you want to ask a question?
Did you have a question?
No, I didn't have a question. I just answered another call on another line, and when I came back, I didn't push mute. So
okay.
You guys are, I'll go back on mute.
Go for it. Go for it. Go ahead and ask your question.
If you have a question, feel free. If not, I'll take the ones from the chat.
I don't really have a question, but I would ask that for accelerators, is it primarily plugging into industry that is the main benefit for startups?
Well, it kind of depends on what the startup is looking for. It could be industry related, like plug and play. That's a common one. Techstars does that industry alignment. They're another one. Or it could be like ours. We're not really aligned with an industry. We're just a blockchain accelerator. So we kind of play with all the blockchains. It could be like 500 startups where it's very tech related. They have others like fashion accelerators. I mean, I have a client in the fashion space, and so she applies to a lot of fashion accelerators. It kind of depends from the startup side. It kind of depends on what it is that you need in that moment, because an accelerator is there to accelerate you.
Yeah.
So you got to think about it.
Way.
Like you're going to have some very, like we do in our Blockchain Accelerator, we have 5 deliverables in 12 weeks. That's not a lot. You know, you got your pitch, you got your white paper, your due diligence data room, you have your international go to market, and then there's one other deliverable. So, I mean, there's 5 deliverables in that, you know, in 12 weeks, that's a lot of things to do in conjunction with running your company. So you have to think about it from your company side. It's like, what is it that you need? And then what is it that you can do that the accelerator can do to help accelerate you there? And it kind of,
and I would say from Data 360 standpoint, we definitely focus on founders that don't necessarily have a development team attached to them, or they need development resources to help them do that. And then we have all kinds of different resources. We have a matching fund that provides up to a $2 million check if you don't have a tech team or a tech co-founder, you need that help. We have a second international team. All they do is co-development, but they also introduce you to investors. They don't have their own fund, but they handle some of the resources. Google and Amazon both handle the resources aspect for you, and they write checks for certain incentive programs, or they just become a customer of yours, or all of the above. And so there's all different ones, but I know all of ours are centered around giving you technological resources and automation and things to help you do better with that, with the tech piece of things in general, but also acceleration through AI machine learning.
Right. So like if you can't, so let's take it like a journey. So let's say you went into the Data 360 labs, and then Data 360 is like, hey, Barb, this company is now ready to come and be accelerated in the blockchain space. I'm like, great, you came through the Data 360 lab, so I already know you're solid on these certain elements. So I don't have to worry as much as if I just get a cold application. All right, great. So then you go through our process, and we're going to have powder. So you have to do certain things to gain powder. And then, you know, we can then put you into other venture capitalists, because, you know, everybody's not writing $1 million checks, 2 million, 5 million, kind of, and we accelerate you. We provide you resources. We make sure you're ready for fundability. We also can help grow and scale you internationally. So that's another aspect that we do that a lot of other accelerators don't do. Like maybe you have some like dating app that's pretty crowded here in the US. Well, maybe it's not as crowded somewhere else, or maybe it's equally as popular somewhere else, and we can find you some communities to go plug that into. And so that helps kind of accelerate your growth. And that's, you know, that's a benefit of being in an accelerator. That's our kind of bailiwick. Then what we do is we'll funnel you into other funding parts based on where you are.
Yeah, that's the same.
It's like a
same
funnel.
for us.
It's like a big funnel. If you think about a funnel, it's a huge funnel, and then it's a win for Data 360. It's a win for the Blockchain Accelerator. It's a win for the next fund. It's a win for the next people. So it's like a big stack funnel.
Yeah, and that's the same with Data 360, and two. Then there are lots of us that operate in multiple cities. In the US, like we're more domestically focused, less internationally focused. We're just starting to become internationally focused. But you know, it really depends on your strategic plan. So that's where, you know, we can't do everything to think through everything for you. You want to make sure you have kind of a strategy and a thought in place. You'll get input from so many people on so many different levels. And I'll give you a prime example is a few days ago, I was talking to a group of investors. We all admired each other as a mutual admiration society. I totally blew the pitch. I wasn't ready because I was stuck in a snowstorm and it was terrible. But because they knew I had been vetted through a certain process, they were comfortable with just talking. And then they were like, yeah, let's go ahead and move forward with the program, because like we know how you've been vetted, we know how you presented yourself.
And that, you
even
know
though you didn't do that.
what you said
Yeah.
is so important. So the other thing that accelerators provide, I'm connected to Marie. Marie's connected to me. We're connected to a lot of the same people around town. We're connected to other people. I mean, the network of what we bring of people and how you're vetted is very important. So like somebody just said past me, like, hey Barb, we don't do this. This isn't in our bailiwick. They're a blockchain company. Here, that's how I got a couple of cohort people. That's how I'm going to get some more cohort people. So you have to look at it from that side of it too. It's like the network of people that we know and the fact that you're already kind of pre-vetted is huge. Because doing a cold email to a venture capitalist, as much as they want to think that's a good idea, is kind of on the crazy side. You better go out there and network with those people or know somebody that's networking with them constantly and go, hey, Barb, hey, Marie, hey, after you're vetted by us, hey, can you help me do this? Because I get asked, every day, Barb, I need investors. I'm like, that's nice. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to give you to any of my investors when you have gone through zero of my process? Zero. I can't, I can't do that. So, that's the other benefit of being a part of an accelerator is also being a part of that investor, supplier, partner, I'll call it an ecosystem, being a part of an ecosystem. Because the other benefit you get is other past startups. Because the way I always look at any of these kind of endeavors is like, how do we go about creating these synergistic, compatible kind of relationships moving forward? So if your company could help one of these other portfolio companies that I've had, or vice versa, why wouldn't I do that?
Right.
It makes that just helps my accelerator. So it's like you have to look at how does the accelerator look at ecosystem building, because that's what we're doing now. And I didn't talk about that enough, and I don't talk about that enough. But that's what companies are doing now. You're not just building a product. You're not just getting customers. You're building an ecosystem. And so one of the best ecosystem builders I was with was called FlexEye. So FlexEye was a big data and analytics company. It was one of the very first ones that coined, big data scientists, and they knew about this. They were in the UK. And what they did is we won this Gartner Co-Vendor Award, but we had created a very large ecosystem. It was like us, and we had Cisco in there, IBM, Arcasa. Like we had some of the largest companies in the world in this ecosystem. And we were the lead, 50-person startup leading this. And so I was like, wow, this is actually really fascinating. And we would go in and bid against Splunk and Tableau and all these companies, and we'd be beating them all the time because we had a very good, we knew how to sell ourselves. But the other thing that was powerful was that we had a huge ecosystem that we were bringing with us. That it wasn't just me, Joe Startup. It was me, Joe Startup, plus these other huge companies, branded names. Well, people still like IBM, and they still like to hear Amazon, Google, da-da-da-da-da. So if you can connect with people that can create that kind of ecosystem for you, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a really big deal. And that's really has been our approach with Data 360. And now we have 5 global partners. We started out with 1 8 months ago. And it's just kind of snowballed because everybody recognizes that there's another wave of ecosystems, and everybody's ecosystems need to be connected and all those fun things. And so you want to make sure that you're on the wave. And there's a lot of companies, just to answer the gentleman's question about the industry. There's a lot of industries where they've recognized the need for innovation, and they just go straight to Techstars or they have their own innovation programs or whatever, or like Google and all those guys, they do a lot of different things, a wide variety of things, including a venture capital arm, just to make sure that their ecosystem stays refreshed and they have capacity and they have all these things that make sense. And then you have to do that for yourself, being a part of their ecosystems, but also building out your own. So like for us, that's what Data 360 Labs is, our own ecosystem that connects to our partners' ecosystem and our company at large. It's very common to do that these days. So, there's some things where you want to make sure when you go back on the replay of this video is like listen to the vocabulary we're using,
Yes.
that Barbara and I are using, because it's very specific vocabulary that will lead you to a lot of different resources that will help you become conversant and become understanding how the different funding mechanisms work and how the different players do the funding. And
Yep.
then as you apply to programs, you'll be a lot more sensitive to more than just your pitch or more than just asking for money, but also all the different mechanisms that you need in your business to be successful.
It's how do you, it's what do you think you need for your business if you took money off of the table? If there was no money, if they provided $0 for your company, this accelerator, then what else are they providing for you that would be beneficial for you to take?
Or there was all the money in the world, what would you do with it?
Well, that's
right.
The other way to say it. It's like if they gave you all the money to fund you until the end of time, then how would that work for you too? Like, what else would you do?
What would you spend money? What would you spend the money on? And a lot of people just say, "Oh, I'll get some people to help me," and that's not really the right answer.
Well, that's a part of the answer, but then who are these people?
Yeah, it can be part of it. Yeah, but I had a startup just pitch me, and she said, I want $150,000, and I want $20,000 to go to a conference, and then I want to make sure and pay my people $50,000 each, 3 people. And I was kind of like, well, what is that?
Like your marketing?
Yeah, you're just telling me. So what you're telling me is you don't have any marketing or sales strategy. You just want to go to a conference, hope for the best, and pay your friends. Now, that's not super interesting to anybody I know.
Well, yeah, that's not very fundable.
Yeah, so there's a lot of times where people just think, oh, I'm just going to guess on a bunch of things. I have tons of contacts and clients and people that have pitched us that just think, oh yeah, I'll just hang out and then like I'll get some people and then we'll figure out what the business is. No, you have to know what the business is, and then it gets funding. It's not the opposite. So you have to make sure
a lot
that
of
that's clear.
people that believe like, hey, if I have this idea and I just ask for all this money, I'm going to get it. All right, we got 8 more minutes, so let's add. Were there any other questions? Eric said, "How about VR medical training games?" That's actually kind of cool. I do have some type of thinking about that.
Okay, go for it.
All right, so VR medical training games. That could be really cool. I like the concept of that. I don't know how that would apply to a blockchain yet. Maybe the content. I know you could do content attribution and paying for that. So that's a way you can put that on the blockchain. But yeah, I mean, VR. Eric, hold on. Let me quiet this down. I don't. You know what? VR is big, but I think AR is going to be bigger. And the reason why I say that is because AR is the mapping of the real world onto the digital world. And we can do that without having to have this extra headset. Now, they are starting to come out with the headsets that are wireless. So now you don't have to be connected to a computer. You can just be out in the ether, which is cool. But your eyes are covered and you still don't have as much kind of freedom as you would in the AR, where you could just literally walk around and lift something over, this computer, or lift something over a Coke can, or I've seen ones, the Lego has it. They had one with LeBron James where LeBron was coming out of the Lakers thing, like that was hot. So I just think that AR in the longer run will be more widely accepted. Now for education purposes, I agree. I think VR is better. I think like for education, meditation, I don't even think for exercise, but I think it could be accepted. And then medical training, I think the thing about VR that could be great for the medical training game is like, instead of using cadavers or any kind of real world people, you could kind of experiment in that way in VR. And I could see that, like, how do I do cutting? Because some of that is kind of like, for lack of a better word, muscle memory. Like you can see, but then it's like, okay, if I'm going to cut you here, like, oops, cut that, you're dead. Oops, cut that, and like, you're not killing anyone, and you're not doing it on a dead person either. So that's the benefit of VR.
Super expensive from a sales ROI perspective, cadavers are so expensive
They're
to
expensive.
obtain, transport, and store. You know, that could be a really good
Well, you
value
need
base.
more than one. It's not like you just need one cadaver. It's like we need, 25 cadavers. You're going to have so many
Yeah.
people, or even 20. Like you're going to need more than one cadaver. It's not like you can get one body there.
Or hundreds, right? And then there's all the paperwork and permissions, and so there, from that perspective,
Yeah,
being
absolutely.
able to deal with all of that, sort of the aspects of the training and like what it does, and doing the agreements and all that stuff. I think it could be VR and blockchain too.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, the agreements and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. All right, and I have to talk to Eric about his. You're welcome. About his sister from Sony, so I'll do that offline.
Okay. Yeah, we'll
All
get
right.
to that.
Were there any other questions in the last kind of couple minutes we have here, or did you have anything else? I'll let Marie wrap it up if not.
I think that's it. I think we're good. I
Awesome.
really like to thank you. We'll start working on getting some folks over to you, but this has been great, and we'll make sure and put it up on the YouTube. We'll post the replay shortly for those of you who will be looking for that. And
Wonderful.
just like
Thank you,
thank
guys.
you again, Barbara, for starring in the video with us. And
Well, thanks so much. I don't normally appear on video, so you guys are very lucky. I'm kind of camera shy a bit. So thank you guys for having me. I thought, having me on video would be great.
Here's a long career on video. I was hesitant to it for a long time, and then I just finally got over it and made it happen.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of over it. I have done about 3 or 4 videos. I haven't posted my other video, which is actually pretty good. So I should get to that. But
okay.
Thank you guys so much for having me today.
All right. Thanks everyone, and we'll be in touch shortly. And have a great day.
All right. You guys have a great rest of your day.